it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe over on Bookstagram, and today I'm going to be summarizing Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole, which is book 2 in the Kindred's Curse saga. Book 4, Burn of the Everflame, comes out on September 8th of this year. If you're not familiar with these summaries, they're going to be full of spoilers, in-depth plot points from the beginning to the end of the book. So if you have not read Glow of the Everflame and you don't want spoilers, don't continue watching. So we start off right where Spark left off, and DM believes she's hallucinating the crown, but Teller assures her that it's real. Then Lily arrives and sees the crown and bows to her as the new queen. Though DM insists she's mortal, Teller points out that she hasn't bled from a wound since her eyes changed color during puberty, and Lily notes her eyes are gray rather than the usual blue of Lumnos Descended. Teller explains there will be a 30-day period of challenging where anyone in the realm can duel the chosen ruler to the death if they deem them unfit. Then there will be a rite of coronation if she survives. Lily suggests DM hide out in the Royal Hunting Lodge while Teller researches the challenging and coronation. Luther finds DM at the lodge and accuses her of killing the king, but she swears she had nothing to do with it. Luther takes her back to the palace on horse, and she realizes that this was the horse Henry saw trample a mortal boy to death, which was the catalyst of Henry joining the Guardians, and she assumes Luther was the man riding that horse. DM arrives at the palace and meets all of Luther's family, and the Gryvern, Sarai, is now bound to her as queen. DM meets Luther and Lily's parents, Remus and Ivana, as well as his Uncle Gareth, Aunt Freya, their sons, Aemon and Taryn, then Eleanor and Alix. When the Courbois discovered DM's mother was mortal and she is half-descended, they're appalled, but Luther proposes she claim House Courbois and say a deceased relative was her father, allowing them all to keep their royal titles while granting her protection during the challenging. DM secretly plans to destroy the descended from within, but she agrees to consider it. Lily apologizes for revealing DM's location to Luther, and DM forgives her and asks her to sneak Teller into the palace. Luther admits he isn't concerned about House Courbois losing its royal status, but asks that the children be allowed to stay if DM rejects their offer, and she, of course, agrees. Luther and DM argue about her mother, and Sarai senses DM's anger and intervenes. Then Luther agrees to share what he knows about Orly if she calls Sarai off. DM finds Eleanor in her room and appoints her as her first advisor to acclimate her to royal life. Aemon gives DM a tour of the palace and asks to escort her to the Ascension Ball, but she reveals she's betrothed to Henry and admits he's immortal. Aemon mentions that as keeper of laws, Luther enforced the king's rule and carried out executions of mortal descended children. Lily sneaks Teller into the dungeons, and Luther senses DM's anger and tells her that magic gets angry when it's suppressed. He then provokes her until her power erupts, then denies killing those children, and DM agrees to claim House Courbois. Luther explains that only powerful descended can sense one another's magic, and that DM's power is stronger than anyone he's ever encountered. He explains that eye color differs by realm, but he's never heard of gray eyes. He realizes that DM was sheltered by her mom's secrets, and he doesn't want to betray Orly's trust, but he reveals that there was never a bargain involving Teller's schooling. He secretly allowed Teller to attend for free and made up the bargain as a cover. He also admits that he caught Orly spying on the palace years ago and realized they shared a common goal. Remus meets with DM and explains the house receptions, which are private meetings with the heads of the 20 houses, and they'll be crucial to avoiding challenges. DM sees Henry performing a courier job and sneaks him into her room. On their way, they see Aemon and Luther arguing, and Henry recognizes the man he saw kill the mortal boy, and DM again assumes it's Luther. She explains that she only learned she was descended the night before, and he's shocked but eventually believes her and thinks her new position as queen can benefit the Guardians. DM asks him to still marry her and be her king. They kiss, but Luther interrupts before things can progress further and tries to escort him out, but Henry causes a scene, yelling that he'll be king. Luther tells Diem that Aemon agreed to keep quiet about Henry if she agrees to let him escort her to the ball. He then shows her a ledger of mortal descended children he was ordered to execute and reveals that he has secretly smuggled most of them to safety with Orly's help. He warns that the descended would never accept a mortal king and that Henry would likely be killed if she presented him as her betrothed before the coronation, so Diem reluctantly agrees to attend the ball with Aemon. Diem meets with Lily and Teller and learns that Luther is the Warden of Light and Gareth is the Warden of Shadows, and they both act with the authority of the crown. She confirms she has magic and asks Teller to keep their father out of town until she can talk to him after the ball. Luther and Diem form an unspoken truce, and Diem realizes that she actually likes and trusts him. After learning Eleanor is her first advisor, Luther suggests Alix as another unconventional advisor because of her military expertise. They run into Alix and Ileana, who flirts with Luther and subtly insults Diem. Alix reveals Ileana and Luther were courting for years and were expected to marry, but he abruptly ended things recently. Later, Luther reassures Diem that he and Ileana are no longer together, and in turn questions whether or not Henry deserves her. Remus explains that challenges are dangerous regardless if they win or lose, and they're unlikely unless the house believes that House Courbois will support them if they challenge. He explains some houses may ask for a bonded bargain, which is a magical agreement that can permanently strip you of your power if broken. Remus advises Diem to appear harmless during the house receptions and let him take the lead. Then they enter a bonded bargain, promising that Diem will claim House Courbois and the family will protect her from challenges in turn. And the late Harold Courbois is chosen as her official fake father. Diem attends King Ulther's funeral wearing black because that's mortal custom, and she immediately realizes she's made a mistake when everyone else is dressed in red to honor their kindred blood, and her choice is seen as very disrespectful. At the funeral, Diem befriends Luther's cousin Taryn and learns about mating bonds, which are magical connections that are usually mutual, but can be one-sided if the magic doesn't think the love is pure, and it binds hearts for eternity. Taryn says that Gareth forbids mating bonds, so marriages can be used for political alliances, and Diem proposes to change that rule once she's coronated. Diem learns that King Ulther's mate Raphael was poisoned the day after his coronation by a rival house, and because of a bonded bargain, he wasn't allowed to punish the house, but his brothers destroyed their house in turn. Later, Gareth argues with Diem and Luther, and Diem threatens to strip him of all of his titles after her coronation. After the interaction with Gareth, Diem asks Eleanor about Luther's comments and learns Gareth abused his sons until the king intervened. During the funeral, Gareth orders Diem to light the pyre and display her power as punishment for their fight, and Luther encourages her, but then she sees Mora and her father in the crowd, and her magic fails, and she collapses. Sarai flies Diem to safety, and Luther brings her father to see her. Andre admits he suspected she might be a descended, but never knew for certain, then reveals that Orly mentioned going on a trip before she disappeared. Diem appoints him as her military advisor, and he's hesitant because he used to secretly advise King Ulther on military strategy, but he was never seen on his actual court because he's mortal. Diem also learns that Alix can use light magic to make people invisible. When they're alone, Luther reveals that Taryn and Alix help him smuggle mortal descended children out of Lumnos. They nearly kiss before Taryn and Eleanor interrupt and pledge their support to Diem and offer to train her with Alix. At a family dinner, Diem sees Ileana seated next to Luther and assumes he invited her. Diem defends her choice to wear black at the funeral because it's a sign of respect for mortals, and Ileana criticizes her scars and says they're unbecoming for a queen. Diem calls them symbols of strength and makes Luther feel better about his own scars in the process. The cousins tease Luther about marrying Diem, but he insists he only intends to serve the crown. Then Aemon offers to marry her instead. Luther visits Diem and she sees that the man she saved during the armory attack, named Perth, is now her personal sentry. Luther and Diem argue about trust and Henry, and Diem apologizes for saying Luther means nothing to her, but she can tell that he's closed himself off again. The next day, Luther apologizes, and they show each other their scars, which feels very intimate. Then Taryn and Alix interrupt for training. At the Ascension Ball, Diem learns Aemon never intended to blackmail her over Henry, and that Luther was the one who encouraged him to escort her. Diem learns that Henry ignored her warnings and showed up to the ball with 200 guardians waiting outside to attack. He doesn't listen when she tries to explain that all of the most powerful descended in the realm are here and they would kill all of the guardians, so she orders the guards to keep Henry detained until the ball ends and begs Luther not to harm the guardians. In order to send them home peacefully, Luther tells Diem to lift the magical block on the Umbros descendants' magic, which allows them to read minds, but warns that she'll risk the Umbros emissaries reading everyone's mind, including hers. Inside the ball, Diem meets Simon of Umbros, and he invades her mind until she forces him out with a burst of power. He gives her cryptic advice from the Queen and says, "When forgotten blood on Heartstone falls, then shall the chains be broke, life for life, old debt requires, or eternal be his yoke." And Diem realizes the mysterious old woman she met on Forging Day was actually the Queen of Umbros. Diem receives an orb of answering from Sophos that will answer any 3 questions because they are the realm of knowledge, and then she declines their offer to allow Teller into their realm for schooling because she learned that they experiment on mortals who are sent there. She reconnects with Evram, the arms dealer she spied on in the last book, and meets Ileana's grandmother, Marth of House Hanaver. Diem shuts down Marth's subtle accusation that she murdered the king and threatens that starting such a rumor could be seen as treason. Diem overhears Ileana telling Luther that Diem will never survive the challenging and that they should rule together, but Luther vows to destroy House Hanaver if they threaten Diem. Later, Diem confronts Aemon and he admits that he exaggerated their relationship to protect Henry from suspicion. Later, the Hanavers corner Diem and question whether or not she has magic, and Luther intervenes and forces them all to kneel to her. During the final dance of the ball, Luther reveals that the Umbros emissaries sent the guardians home peacefully and that Henry is safe. Diem confesses that she doesn't know what she's doing as queen and accidentally reveals that she wants to tear down the descended system, and Luther promises to stand beside her because he believes Mother Lumnos chose her to bring change to the realm. When she asks if he meant it when he said he didn't want to marry her, he admits he wants all of her but doesn't need a crown to serve her. The next day, Eleanor tells Diem to marry Henry if she truly loves him, but not if she's just trying to cling to her old life. The house receptions begin, and Andre joins as her advisor and quickly becomes friends with Eleanor and Taryn. During the meeting with Evram, things get tense during negotiations over the rebel armory attack and the treatment of mortals. After, Andre says his presence isn't helping her win the house's favor and steps down as her advisor, and they have a little bit of an argument. Alix interrupts Diem, Lily, and Teller and says there's been an attack. Diem takes Sarai to her family cottage, and they find slaughtered royal guards and also find her dad, Andre, inside the house dead. Diem orders Sarai to take Luther away, then she erupts with power and burns the entire cottage to the ground. Then Luther comes back and carries her away. Alix takes over as Diem's military advisor as the house receptions are forced to continue, and House Hanaver offers condolences for Andre's murder and denies any involvement. Then Marth demands all mortals be exiled from the realm or they'll challenge the crown. Diem refuses to make a bonded bargain beyond promising to be a fair and just ruler for all, and says she'll meet them on the challenging mat if needed. At Andre's funeral, Henry arrives with Vance, the head of the Guardians. Diem explains that she protected the Guardians by sending them away at the ball, and Henry believes her. She's desperate to hold on to him, so she offers information on the palace docks as long as they promise no bloodshed. Henry kisses her, but Diem sees Luther watching and runs. Diem continues magic training without much success, and she secretly blindfolds and sneaks Henry and Vance into the palace docks to search for hidden passages on the royal boat, but guards interrupt them. Vance uses the chaos to escape so he can learn the route back for himself, and Henry ignores Diem and follows Vance. During another house reception, Diem learns Remus arranged a marriage between Lily and Roderick Burnham of one of the lower houses. Diem dismisses the proposal, which leads to an argument with Remus. Luther defends Diem with the Sword of Courbois, and Remus reveals that he knows she still can't wield her magic and subtly threatens her. Diem takes Lily to the healer center and brings expensive medicinal herbs that are forbidden for mortals to plant themselves, and we learn this is just one of the many ways Diem has been attempting to better the lives of the mortals during her challenging period. When Diem presses Lily, Lily insists that she'll accept the marriage to Roderick for her family's sake, but Diem promises to protect her if she wants it. Later, Taryn tells Diem to embrace her emotions in order to wield her magic, and then bluntly tells her to leave Henry for Luther because he's more loyal and selfless than Henry and will spend his life waiting for her, which makes her storm off. At the final house reception, Eamon corners Diem and she sees a different side of him, and Taryn intervenes. Then Remus announces that as regent, he stripped Luther of all of his titles and gave them to Eamon, and Diem feels guilty because she knows Remus is just punishing Luther for defending her. Later, Diem uses the compass she was gifted from Miros at her Ascension Ball that leads to her heart's true desire and is led to Luther's sword at the ruins of her family home, and she's devastated that her heart just wants her normal mortal life with her family all together, and she'll never have that again. Taryn, Teller, and Alix show up and comfort and encourage her, and she feels a bit of her magic start to stir again. Back at the palace, Diem uses the Orb of Answering and learns that both her mother and birth father are still alive. The day before the challenging, Diem finally sees Luther again, and he reveals House Hanover agreed not to challenge her if he entered a bonded bargain to marry Ileana. Diem begs him not to do it unless he truly wants to, and he says he'll only decline if Diem proves she can use her magic. Luther helps her unlock her shielding magic, proving she can finally access her power, and he agrees to reject the bargain. Before leaving, he gives her a letter from Henry wishing her luck at the challenging. Diem realizes she needs to end things with Henry and travels with Taryn and Alix to see him, but finds out he left on a mysterious delivery and won't return for a week. She's hurt that he abandoned her before the challenging, and Taryn and Alix are ashamed that they never saw how the mortals were treated in person before now, and it definitely stirs some feelings inside of them. At the challenging, Diem finally finds out that the rider Henry saw trample the mortal boy was Eamon, not Luther. Before the challenging, Luther tells Diem that Teller kissed Lily after she rejected Roderick's proposal. Then, in front of the entire arena, Luther kisses Diem as a warning to everyone that might challenge her. Teller questions if Diem will finally leave Henry for Luther after the kiss, and points out that Henry isn't even there to support her. House Ghislaine, the lowest house, issues the first challenge, followed by Roderick Burnham and every other house. Finally, Luther shocks everyone by challenging Diem on behalf of House Courbois, which breaks the bonded bargain she had with Remus and makes him lose his power. Chaos erupts as Remus admits that he'll have to choose Luther as the challenger since he's the strongest and that's what the rules call for, which means one of them will die. Remus is spiraling because he won't have magic anymore, and Diem offers him a new, non-magical bargain to let her choose her own opponent, and if she wins, she won't tell anyone that he's lost his magic, as long as he vows to protect Teller and let Eleanor back into the family. After Remus announces that she's choosing her own challenger, the lesser houses panic and reveal that the Hanovers tricked them into challenging her, stating that House Courbois wouldn't retaliate if they all challenged. Luther insists she fight him instead, and she realizes Luther intended to sacrifice himself for her, and she kisses him before the match. Diem chooses to fight Ron Ghislaine because he's the descended man who killed his half-mortal child in the streets during Book 1, and he's powerful enough to show her strength, even though he's from the lowest house. The challenging begins, but Diem isn't able to use her magic to attack. Ron taunts her about her lack of magic and strikes her down. Then she enters the same vision state that she's had of a battlefield, and this time there's a glowing man who calls her the Daughter of the Forgotten and urges her to destroy the world and rebuild it. Diem refuses and says she'll rule for both mortals and descended, and she hears a voice in her head saying that she's ready. She wakes up and wields both light and shadow, and none of Ron's magical blows touch her. She easily defeats him, but spares his life and announces that true strength lies in the lives that they save. Ron attacks her again as she's walking away and is disintegrated by a flash of light. Diem puts on a show of her power and threatens her challengers one by one until they all kneel and accept her as queen. On the way to her coronation, Luther finally reveals his big secret. Before he was born, Remus received a vision that his firstborn son would become the most powerful descendant in Lumnos, but Luther was born to Remus's mortal mistress, Floriel. Remus hid the truth and eventually tried to kill Floriel, and Luther got his scar protecting her. Then Remus sent another shot that killed her and left Luther for dead. Mother Lumnos appeared to Luther and showed him a vision of himself kneeling before a gray-eyed queen and says it wasn't his time to die yet. When he met Diem, he believed she was that queen, but began to doubt when she kept insisting that she was mortal. He chose to earn her trust through his actions because he didn't think she'd believe him about this vision. Diem admits that she was taking flame root powder, and that's why she couldn't tell that she was a descended, and Luther realizes that Aurelie has been keeping way too many secrets. Diem arrives at the Isle of Correal for the rite of coronation with each of the realm's rulers, and magic is nullified on the island. She finds out that the flowers on the island produce flame root, which is likely why powers are nullified on the island. Inside the Kindred temple, we see that the chamber is the same one Aurelie was standing in at the end of Book 1. Diem sees the Queen of Umbros, who is shockingly young-looking now, and the King of Montios quietly calls her the Daughter of the Forgotten. The rulers reveal the descendants' greatest secret is that if the Heartstone is destroyed, their realms will crumble and each ruler has to bleed onto the stone every forging day and new coronation to maintain the spell that binds the realms together. When Diem's blood touches the stone, it turns gray instead of blue, and a storm erupts and the Heartstone cracks after a lightning strike. The rulers call her an imposter, then Aurelie appears and tells Diem to run. In the epilogue, we see Aurelie's point of view again, and she is spying on the crowns entering the temple when Luther catches her. She sees that he doesn't have the crown, and he begs her to come back so he can explain what's happened, but she flees because she has some sort of bigger plan. Vance shows up and tries to warn her about Diem, but before he can, she sees Diem and runs for her as a massive explosion goes off on the island. So that's where Book 2 ends. I will be posting my summary for Book 3 shortly, in time for Book 4, again on September 8th. As always, if there are any other books you would like me to summarize, just leave me a comment, and thanks for watching.